So, you want to build luxury bunkers for wealthy clients. The sales pitch looks simple from the surface. Fabricate a reinforced shell, put it under a private estate, add a heavy door, filtered air, backup power, water storage, bedrooms, and a kitchen. Then charge far more than the steel itself appears to cost. The customer may never use it for the event it was built around. The price can rise very quickly while the builder's final margin remains surprisingly fragile. But if that event ever comes, almost every hidden system has to work at the same time. The drainage, the pumps, the batteries, the generator, the air intake, the filters, the seals, the communications. The emergency exit. One failed component can make an otherwise perfect room unusable. That is the paradox at the center of this business. The company sells a product that is difficult for the customer to test, expensive to customize, slow to deliver, and almost impossible to evaluate with complete confidence. That does not guarantee a high profit margin. It does allow the price to rise very quickly, while the builder's final margin remains surprisingly fragile. By the end of this video, you will understand why one operator can advertise access to an existing fortified shell for around $55,000, why another sells finished underground residences for several million, where a private builder can add real value, and how one difficult excavation can erase the profit from an otherwise successful year. Because the most valuable part of a luxury bunker is usually not the bunker. It is the promise that every invisible system around it will still work when the world above it does not. The first thing to understand is that Bunker Company describes at least 3 different businesses. The first is the prefabricated shelter manufacturer. This company builds repeatable steel or concrete modules in a factory, ships them to the customer's property, and either installs them directly or works with a local excavation crew. The product may be a corrugated steel cylinder, a reinforced rectangular room, or a modular shelter assembled from several connected sections. This is the closest the industry gets to conventional manufacturing: standard dimensions, repeatable doors, repeatable filtration packages, repeatable floor plans. The more work completed before the truck leaves the factory, the easier it becomes to estimate labor, material, and schedule. The second business is the custom estate bunker contractor. This customer does not want a catalog product. They want an underground extension of a luxury home. Private bedrooms, an office, a gym, medical storage, redundant communications, hidden access, and finishes that match the property above it. A manufacturer, a custom contractor, and an underground community are 3 different businesses. Now the company is acting as a design-build contractor, systems integrator, specialty manufacturer, project manager, and privacy service at the same time. The third business is the underground community. Instead of building one private shelter from scratch, the operator acquires an existing hardened structure or a large complex, divides the infrastructure among multiple buyers, and sells private units, membership, or access. Survival Condo in Kansas markets finished residences inside a converted missile silo. Its current public pages list roughly $1.5 million for a half-floor package, $3 million for a full floor package, and at least $4.5 million for a penthouse. Vivos xPoint in South Dakota uses a different model. Its public pricing lists $55,000 for a 99-year leased bunker, or $75,000 to purchase a bunker with surrounding land before the owner completes a serious interior and utility package. Those are not comparable products. One sells repeatable manufactured units. One sells custom construction. One spreads inherited infrastructure across many buyers. For this episode, we're following the company that sits between manufacturing and custom construction, a regional United States builder that standardizes the shell, then earns the contract by integrating everything around it. And to understand that business, you have to separate the price of the object from the price of the finished project. At the bottom of the ladder is access to an existing shell. Vivos xPoint says its bunkers are about 2,200 square feet and can be outfitted gradually. The company describes a basic glamping-style interior that can begin around $10,000, but that figure excludes several systems the customer still has to add, including a generator, sanitation, water filtration, lighting, and interior finishing. That distinction matters. A low entry price can buy the fortified volume without buying the finished refuge. Move one step up, and you reach the standardized, finished shelter. Atlas Survival Shelters has documented a 10 by 50-foot platinum project with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen and living area, presented at $250,000. Its current pricing page does not publish a complete universal catalog price. It says quotes depend on the shelter and size, with typical delivery running roughly 3 to 12 months. Move higher, and the project becomes less comparable. A hidden entrance, a difficult site, a medical room, duplicated power, premium interiors, custom communications, or a connection to the main residence can move the price far beyond the cost of the shell. At the very top, a bunker stops behaving like equipment and starts behaving like private architecture. The client is no longer asking, "How much steel do I get?" The shell creates the product. The site, systems, and schedule create the invoice. They are asking, how many people can live here, for how long, with what level of comfort, and who takes responsibility when the systems do not cooperate. This is the first rule of the business. The shell creates the visible product. The site, systems, schedule, and customization create the final invoice. Now look at the company from the owner's side. There is no single standard startup budget because an installer that buys completed shells is a different business from a manufacturer that rolls steel and fabricates its own modules. But take one illustrative regional manufacturer. Not an industry average, not a quoted requirement. A transparent model we can test. This operation wants a fabrication workshop, lifting and welding equipment, material storage, a finished demonstration unit, engineering support, insurance, and enough working capital to carry several projects before final payment. The workshop and equipment might absorb around $350,000. A credible demonstration unit and showroom might require another $250,000. Engineering, drawings, software, legal setup, insurance deposits, and early testing might consume $100,000. Then comes working capital. Steel is purchased before the project is complete. Skilled labor is paid every week. Doors, filters, batteries, pumps, and generators may have long lead times. Freight and excavation deposits do not wait for the final customer payment. Put $400,000 aside for payroll and project cash flow, then another $100,000 for sales, travel, and early customer acquisition. That produces an illustrative starting requirement of roughly $1.2 million. The number could be much lower for a broker-installer using third-party products. It could be several times higher for a company carrying inventory, pouring large concrete structures, or building luxury demonstration facilities. But even the modeled number reveals the real barrier. This is not only a capital problem, it is a credibility problem. The business needs welders and fabricators. It needs mechanical specialists, electricians, plumbers, engineering support, and field crews. It needs insurance for construction, transport, employees, and completed work. It needs enough documentation to survive local review. And it needs a buyer to transfer a 6-figure deposit for a product that cannot be returned to a store. The factory is expensive. Trust takes longer. The largest startup barrier is not only capital, it is credibility. A new buyer tends to focus on the visible object, the reinforced shell. That is usually the wrong place to look. The shell is the easiest part to compare. Length, diameter, steel thickness, number of rooms, door type. Once two companies are quoting a genuinely comparable module, price competition becomes uncomfortable. The builder escapes that comparison by selling layers around the shell. The first layer is customization. A standard floor plan can be priced repeatedly. A hidden entrance, unusual property connection, medical room, private office, premium interior, or duplicated power system cannot be compared as cleanly. The more unique the project becomes, the less useful a simple price per square foot comparison becomes. The second layer is integration. The customer could theoretically coordinate an excavator, structural engineer, electrician, plumber, generator supplier, water treatment company, interior contractor, and security consultant separately. Most clients are paying the bunker company to become the single point of responsibility. That does not make every markup pure profit. Integration requires management, testing, and warranty exposure. But it gives the builder pricing power because the client is buying fewer interfaces and fewer people to blame. The third layer is field execution. Transing a large module may require specialized trucking, route planning, cranes, excavation, shoring, drainage, backfill, and restoration. Atlas publishes separate field labor and engineering visit charges in its FAQ, which illustrates a basic point. Factory price and installed project price are not the same number. The fourth layer is the upgrade ladder. A generator becomes dual generation. A water tank becomes storage plus treatment plus backup pumping. An emergency sleeping room becomes private bedrooms. A basic electrical panel becomes batteries, transfer equipment, and prioritized circuits. A simple interior becomes cabinetry, acoustic treatment, lighting, entertainment, and luxury finishes. The fifth layer is schedule. Atlas currently advertises a 10% rush premium for delivery under 12 weeks when possible, and 20% for delivery under 8 weeks. The steel did not become 20% more valuable. The production slot did. And then there is privacy. A high-end customer may require non-disclosure agreements, limited crew access, discreet delivery, and strict handling of plans. Privacy can support a higher price, but it also creates extra legal, scheduling, and staffing cost. It is value, not free margin. Put all of that together and the revenue model becomes clearer. The shell gets the client into the conversation. Integration, options, fieldwork, and time create the contract value. This is where the business starts to resemble private architecture more than emergency equipment. The shell starts the conversation. Integration and options build the contract. A serious sales conversation does not begin with the color of the door. It begins with questions. How many people? For how long? What water source? What medical needs? What climate? What existing utilities? Will the space be used every week as an office or maintained only for emergencies? Does it connect to the main house? What happens if the main house is damaged? Does the owner need a second exit? Each answer changes the design, the site work, and the liability. And the buyer is rarely one person. A spouse may care about comfort. An architect may care about integration. A security advisor may care about access. A property manager may care about maintenance. A family office may care about legal exposure and payment milestones. One contract can require months of education before anyone signs. That creates a cost the public never sees. The builder may spend money on travel, conceptual layouts, engineering conversations, and site review for a prospect who never purchases. Interest can surge after a frightening headline, disappear when the news cycle calms down, then return months later after material and labor costs have changed. That is why the responsible operator charges for design, feasibility, or site work before final construction. The company cannot give away months of custom thinking and recover the cost only from the buyers who eventually close. It also explains why the highest-end builder does not need thousands of customers. It needs a small number of qualified buyers who own suitable property, can fund deposits, accept a long process, and understand that the final number will move as the project becomes real. The marketing may begin with catastrophe. The actual sale looks like a private design commission. And once the design is approved, the least glamorous systems become the most important part of the contract. Start with water. A person can live without premium cabinetry. They cannot live long without safe water. The design may use stored water, a well, filtration, treatment, or a combination. Tanks need inspection. Filters need replacement. Pumps need power. Pipes need protection from temperature and pressure. Then air. A bunker is not protected simply because it has a thick door. The air pathway has to be understood. The system may require ordinary ventilation, protected intakes and exhaust, filtration selected for the stated hazard, pressure control, and some form of backup. Filters have service lives. Seals age. Motors fail. Intakes can be blocked. Then power. Generators are familiar, but fuel is finite. Batteries are quiet, but capacity is finite. Solar can extend operation, but equipment above ground remains exposed. A credible design combines sources and assigns priorities. Ventilation and water before entertainment and comfort. Then waste. At the luxury end, this looks less like equipment sales and more like private architecture. Luxury renderings rarely focus on sanitation, but toilets, tanks, pumps, and venting determine whether the room remains usable after the first few days. Then, moisture. Water does not need a cinematic disaster to damage an underground project. It can move through soil, rise around the structure, condense on cold surfaces, or exploit a failed joint. Waterproofing, drainage, sump systems, and accessible service paths are part of the product even when the customer never sees them. Then, radon. The Environmental Protection Agency says radon can move from soil into buildings through cracks and other openings in the foundation and build up indoors. Any enclosed space in contact with the ground requires testing and a plan based on the actual site, not an assumption. Then, fire and egress. The strongest entrance in the world is not useful if smoke or damage blocks the only path out. The project needs a credible emergency exit strategy appropriate to the design and local requirements. The customer sees a bedroom, a screen, and a polished kitchen. The builder sees a chain of dependent systems. That chain creates two economic consequences. First, it raises the installed price far beyond the shell. Second, it creates a service opportunity after construction. Inspections, filter cycles, battery replacement, generator maintenance, pump tests, seal checks, water treatment, and owner training. That service revenue is not guaranteed, and public operators do not disclose enough detail to prove how large it is. But a disciplined builder can turn maintenance from an afterthought into a recurring relationship. And all those specialized systems have to be sourced, installed, and tested in the correct order, which means the calendar is not administrative paperwork. The calendar is part of the product. Luxury bunker demand does not arrive evenly. It arrives in waves. A war scare, banking crisis, pandemic, wildfire season, election, or high-profile discussion of preparedness can produce a sudden flood of inquiries. Most inquiries are not contracts. Some are curiosity. Some are panic. Some come from people who do not own suitable property, do not have liquid funds, or expect a finished underground residence before the next headline. Survival Condo states in its own FAQ that most conventional banks and lenders will not finance its product, so buyers need liquid funds. That is the operator's experience, not a universal rule for every shelter project, but it reveals how unusual this asset can be. The builder therefore has to qualify for readiness, not just urgency. Can the client fund design? Can they fund deposits? Is the land suitable? Will local review be required? Can the schedule survive engineering and procurement? A project may collect payments at design, fabrication, delivery, and installation milestones. That protects working capital, but every milestone creates another promise. If the steel is late, the schedule moves. If the excavation discovers rock, the budget moves. If groundwater appears, the design moves. If a custom door is delayed, other trades wait. If the client changes the floor plan after fabrication begins, the margin moves. A polished bedroom is useless if the least glamorous pump fails underneath it. A long backlog can look like success while hiding future losses. The company may have millions of dollars under contract at yesterday's price, with tomorrow's labor and material costs still ahead of it. That is why rush pricing makes economic sense. A buyer moving forward in the queue consumes overtime, supplier flexibility, and a production slot that could have served someone else. The company is not only selling a bunker, it is selling a credible delivery date. And even a perfect factory schedule can be destroyed by the one part of the project the factory does not control: the ground. Imagine the drawings are approved. The module is complete. The client has paid the deposit. Then excavation begins. The soil is weaker than expected. The water table is higher. The access road cannot support the crane. The utility line is not where the plan suggested. The property sits in a drainage path. The excavation requires more shoring. The local authority classifies the space differently from the way the sales team expected. Every one of those problems can consume the margin from the project. This is the trap buyers miss when they compare headline prices. They price the object. The site prices the project. A responsible proposal separates factory scope from field scope. It states assumptions about soil, water, access, utilities, and approval. It identifies allowances and change order triggers. It explains what happens if the buyer changes the design after materials are ordered. A high-end operator goes further. It charges for feasibility, geotechnical review, drainage planning, structural coordination, and site access before promising a final number. That feels expensive at the beginning. It is cheaper than discovering the problem with a crane waiting on the property. Then comes completed project risk. A cabinet problem is annoying. A waterproofing failure can require reopening soil around a buried structure. A failed pump can damage finishes. A ventilation issue can make the room unusable. The cost of returning to a remote private estate may exceed the original profit on the failed component, so the builder needs warranty reserves, documentation, and service partners. And here is the deeper problem. Most of this work becomes invisible after the soil is replaced. The customer cannot independently inspect every joint, drainage path, seal, cable, and control sequence. They are forced to rely on the builder's explanation of what was done and what the system can survive. That information gap is where trust becomes valuable. It is also where irresponsible marketing becomes dangerous. Fear is a powerful customer acquisition channel. A frightening headline can make a bunker feel urgent in a way that an ordinary renovation never will. But fear creates inquiries more easily than it creates qualified contracts. And exaggerated claims create a future liability. A responsible company has to define the hazard it is actually designing around. Wind is not radiation. Radiation is not floodwater. Floodwater is not smoke. Smoke is not a long power outage. FEMA Safe Room guidance is focused on tornadoes and hurricanes. It addresses specific wind, debris, foundation, and siting criteria. It does not automatically certify a private underground room as a universal nuclear, chemical, or long-duration shelter. Official CDC radiation emergency guidance also emphasizes something much less expensive. Get inside a building, move toward the basement or middle, stay inside, and follow official instructions. A private bunker may provide additional capability for specific scenarios, but it is not the only useful shelter, and it is not a guarantee against every event. The business works best when it sells capability instead of certainty. A builder can explain what the project was designed to do, what assumptions were used, which systems require maintenance, and which risks remain. It should not promise that one room makes a family invulnerable. This matters economically because the customer is buying emotional relief as well as physical infrastructure. The project turns an abstract fear into a floor plan, a checklist, and a locked door. That relief is real, but it becomes false confidence if the owner never replaces the filters, never tests the generator, stores too little water, or assumes the shelter solves every emergency automatically. The best operator does not tell the customer that the world is ending. The best operator tells the customer exactly what the product can and cannot do. That may sound like weaker marketing. In a business where most quality disappears underground, it is stronger marketing. Now, the three public models make sense for a different reason. Atlas represents the manufacturing advantage. The buyer prices the object. The site prices the project. Repeatable modules, supplier relationships, known components, and factory processes can make the shell more predictable. The constraint is what happens after the product reaches the property. Vivos xPoint represents the platform advantage. The company begins with hundreds of existing hardened structures. The owner purchases or leases the scarce shell, then chooses how far to take the interior. The inherited physical inventory reduces the need to manufacture a new underground structure for every buyer. Survival condo represents shared infrastructure. The buyer is not funding a private power system, water system, security operation, and common facility alone. Many owners support one complex. The advantage is spreading fixed infrastructure across multiple units. The risk is concentration. The reputation and long-term maintenance of one property affect everyone inside it. The private custom builder cannot copy those models completely. It does not own hundreds of inherited bunkers. It does not spread one mechanical plant across dozens of customers. Its path to scale is narrower. Standardize the parts the customer does not need to reinvent. Shell dimensions, doors, filtration packages, electrical architecture, documentation, commissioning checklists, and supplier relationships. Then customize the parts the customer is actually willing to pay for. Layout, integration, finish, privacy, redundancy, and site coordination. Standardize the core. Customize the contract. That is the operating idea underneath the entire business, but private companies in this market do not publish enough financial detail to reconstruct a reliable industry income statement. So the final numbers cannot honestly be presented as averages. The best we can do is build two transparent stress tests from explicit assumptions and see where the model breaks. These are original illustrative scenarios. They are not reported results from Atlas, Vivos, Survival Condo, or any other operator. They are not industry averages, and they are not earnings promises. Start with the illustrative $1.2 million setup we built earlier. Responsible companies sell defined capability, not certainty they cannot prove. Assume the company reaches a mature year and completes 12 projects at an average contract value of $225,000. Total revenue, $2.7 million. Now assume direct steel, doors, mechanical packages, interior materials, shop labor, delivery, and subcontracted fieldwork consume 72% of revenue. That is $1.94 million in direct cost. Gross profit? $760,000. Then subtract an illustrative $560,000 for management, sales, rent, insurance, engineering support, marketing, travel, vehicles, professional fees, and warranty reserves. Modeled pre-tax operating profit, $200,000. That is about 7% of revenue. Not a terrible business. Not an easy one either. The owner has more than $1 million committed, depends on deposits and project timing, and can lose a large part of the year to one excavation dispute or one serious warranty return. Change just one assumption. Suppose the same 12 projects suffer average direct costs of 78% instead of 72% because field labor, drainage and rework run over budget. Gross profit falls by $162,000. Almost the entire operating profit disappears without revenue changing at all. That is the regional model in one sentence. The top line can look healthy while a few percentage points of field cost decide the year. Now assume a smaller company closes 4 major projects at an average contract value of $2.5 million. Revenue, $10 million. Assume direct design, fabrication, excavation, mechanical systems, interiors, subcontractors, and project labor consume 72%. Gross profit, $2.8 million. The company carries $1.6 million in annual overhead because luxury sales require design staff, project management, travel, legal support, insurance, privacy procedures, and long periods of unpaid business development. Modeled operating profit in the clean year, $1.2 million. That is the attractive version. Now delay 2 client decisions. One site discovers groundwater and difficult crane access. Another project changes scope after fabrication begins. Only 2 large projects reach meaningful revenue during the year. Revenue falls to an illustrative $5.2 million. Direct cost and rework consume $4 million. Gross profit falls to $1.2 million. Fixed overhead remains close to $1.6 million. Modeled operating loss, $400,000. Same team, same showroom, same reputation. The difference is 2 delayed contracts and 1 difficult hole in the ground. That is the volatility of a low-volume custom contractor. A $10 million backlog can still run out of cash if the milestones do not arrive when payroll does. A luxury bunker looks like an underground real estate product. The business underneath it is more complicated. The shell is manufacturing. The excavation is construction. The water, air, power, and waste systems are engineering. The interior is luxury design. The sale is private consulting. The maintenance plan can become a service relationship. And the emotion holding all of it together is the customer's desire to turn an uncertain future into something with a door, a floor plan, and a price. That is why access to an existing fortified shell can begin in the tens of thousands, while a finished private project reaches millions. The customer is not paying only for steel and concrete. They are paying someone else to identify the failures they do not want to imagine, coordinate the systems they cannot evaluate alone, and accept responsibility for the details that disappear when the soil goes back. A luxury bunker is custom insurance you can walk into, but the builder does not get paid simply for making the customer feel safe. The builder gets paid for making thousands of invisible decisions hold together as one product. And the profit survives only when the promise, the project, and the ground all agree.